morning students, welcome back to CA Final Auditing class number 7. This is CA Aditya. Please like, share and subscribe to my YouTube channel and also join my Telegram channel for the purpose of downloading the notes. So students, in the current class we are going to discuss about SA 230, that is audit documentation. Okay students, let's start the class. See students, SA 230 means audit documentation. Audit documentation means audit procedures performed, audit evidence obtained and the conclusions reached. Okay students, audit documentation means audit procedures performed. What are the audit procedures to be performed by the auditor? Compliance procedure and substantive procedures. And what is meant by audit evidence? Audit evidence means substantive, that is sufficient and appropriate audit evidence. What is meant by audit evidence? Sufficient and appropriate audit evidence. And the conclusions reached. Conclusions reached means what is providing, that is it will be providing, the conclusions may provide unmodified opinion or qualified opinion or adverse opinion, and the disclaimer of opinion will be based on the conclusions reached. These conclusions will be reached based on audit evidence, and the audit evidence will be obtained based on audit procedures performed. So these all are combined and put at one place, that is they are recorded, that is the audit procedures performed, audit evidence obtained and the conclusions reached. These three are recorded at one place. It is known as audit documentation. Audit documentation is also known as audit file or working paper. See students, audit documentation is also known as audit file or working paper. Okay students, what is the main purpose of audit documentation? What is the main purpose of audit documentation? See students, audit evidence, in the case of audit documentation, audit evidence is one of the part. Audit evidence obtained. See students, main advantages of audit documentation is audit evidence obtained, which provides a basis for conclusion to the auditor, which is the overall objective of the auditor. See, audit evidence will provide basis for conclusion for the achieving of overall objective of the auditor, and the audit evidence also will provide for plan and perform the audit in accordance with standards on auditing by the auditor. See students, audit evidence will provide that whether plan and performance of audit in accordance with standards on auditing by the auditor or not. Okay students, and the additional purposes of audit documentation, it will assist the engagement team plan and perform the audit for next years. See students, when there is a audit documentation, when the next year the staff has come and whether they are going to work for the purpose of references, they will check the previous year documentation so that it will assist them, that is it will assist the engagement team to perform the next year audit. So it will provide an assistant to plan and perform the audit for next years. See students, the audit documentation where the engagement team in the audit has done some work and it is documented and it should be documented, then in such case the audit documentation should be brought to the engagement partner so that he can direct, supervise and review the work performed by the engagement team. See students, the staff in the audit client, that the audit time, see students, the staff in the audit team will perform the audit and they will document the working papers, and in such case the working papers are brought to the engagement partner. Then the engagement partner will direct, supervise and review the work performed by the staff in the audit team. So okay students, it will assist, the audit document will assist the engagement partner. Without the audit documentation, he cannot direct, supervise and review the work performed by the engagement members of the audit team. Okay students, engagement enabling the engagement team accountability of the work done. See, the audit documentation will provide for accountability of work done. See, when there are no working papers and there are no audit file, or when there are no audit documentation, we cannot show a proof that the audit has been done. So if there is a audit documentation or working paper, we can show that there is a accountability of work, that we can say that the work is done, that is the accountability of work is done. Okay, students, reference for future audits. See, the audit documentation will plays an important role for the purpose of future audits because it will provide a reference to the previous year audits. See, when looking to the previous year audit documentation, we can perform the next year audits also. See, students, in the case of quality control review, as per SQC1 standards on quality control, a quality control reviewer will review the audit procedures performed, audit evidence obtained and conclusions reached, which is nothing but audit documentation. So for the purpose of SQC1 quality control review also audit documentation should be maintained. See students, the case of external inspection, in the case of external inspection also audit documentation should be maintained as per peer review. See, peer review means in peer review conducted by the ICAA as per peer review board. A peer review board is constituted by the ICAA for the purpose of peer review. What is meant by peer review? It is a review conducted by the member of the ICAA regarding the audit firms. The peer review board will select a audit firm and the peer review is conducted by the member of the ICA for that audit firm. So in such audit firm, for conducting the peer review, the member of the ICA will check the audit documentation. For the purpose of peer review also we should kept the audit documentation. So students, next, how to maintain audit documentation. See students, how to maintain audit documentation. It should be maintained in such a manner that the experienced auditor having no connection with the audit. See students, it should be maintained in such a manner that the experienced auditor having no connection with the audit can be able to understand audit procedures performed, audit evidence obtained and the conclusions reached, which is nothing but audit documentation. Okay students, see, for how much time the audit documentation should be kept? It should kept minimum for a period of 7 years. The audit documentation should be kept for a minimum period of 7 years as per SA 230. Okay students, ownership of audit documentation. The audit documentation are the property of the auditor. See students, audit documentation which is nothing but working papers, they are the property of the auditor. He may at his discretion may make availability of copies to the client. So okay students, even documentation of the branch and internal audit are the property of their own. So they are not bound to be shared the working papers to the statutory auditor. Okay students, even documentation of the branch and internal audit are property of their own and they are not bound to share documents with external auditor. Okay students, next, assembly of working papers. See, in the case of audit, see students, assembly of working papers means in the case of audit a large number of staffs are involved. See students, assembly of working papers, in the case of audit there are large number of staff are involved. In such a case the working papers are scattered around the large number of staffs. So in such case the working papers are brought to at one place and the unused or useless working papers are to be deleted and the useful papers are kept in one place and the reference number should be given to that working papers, that is a sequence number should be given, that is the most important working papers are kept at the initial and some important are kept at the middle and the least important are kept at the back. So in such case a reference shall be given to the working paper. So for this a time is required. So the time given for the purpose of assembly of working papers is not greater than 60 days. That is the time required for the purpose of assembly of working paper are not greater than 60 days from the date of audit report. Not greater than 60 days from the date of audit report there are to be assembled. Okay students, see, form, factors affecting the form, content and extent of audit documentation. See students, what are the form, content and extent of audit documentation? What are the factors affecting? What are the factors affecting the form, content and extent of documentation? Form means in what format the audit documentation should be there. Content means what you write in it, and extent means how much you write in it. See students, factors affecting the form, content and extent of audit documentation means form, in what format the audit documentation should be there, and what you write in that audit documentation, and how much you will write in that audit documentation as per extent. Okay students, size, factors affecting the form, content and extent of audit documentation. The first point is size and complexity of the entity. See students, the audit documentation, that is the audit file or working papers, will depend upon the size and complexity of the entity. See, in the case of a small company, the audit file will be as small as that. See, in the case of big firm, that is in the case of big company, in the case of Reliance, the audit file, the working papers will be large. So based on the size and complexity of the entity, the audit size, that is the audit documentation or audit file, will depend. Okay students, in the case of large firm, the audit working papers will be more. In the case of small firm, that is in the case of small organization of the client, the audit documentation will be small. Okay students, risk of material misstatement identified. See, in the case of risk of material misstatement identified or low, then we can take a small samples. In such a case, the audit documentation will be low. If the risk of material misstatement identified is large, then we will check the full samples. That is, we will check all the transactions. In such a case, the audit documentation or audit file or working papers will be more. Okay students, next, audit procedures performed and audit evidence obtained and exceptions identified. See students, exceptions identified. Exceptions identified means, see, when we ordered a purchase for 5,000 quantity and we have received 4,500 quantity, but payment for the goods has received for 5,000 quantity. In such case, there is a inconsistency has been observed and a fraud has been observed, since in the purchase order only 5,000 quantity we have received, actual received stock is 4,500 and the invoice to be paid, that is the amount to be paid to supplier, is 5,000 quantity. So there is a fraud of 500 quantity. So a exception is identified. For the purpose of identifying this exception, the audit documentation will be as much as it required. See, conclusions reached. See, in the case of conclusions reached, the unmodified opinion or qualified opinion, on the basis the reasons are to be provided in the unmodified opinion or qualified opinion. In such case, when you are providing an audit modified opinion, the audit documentation or audit file or working paper will be more. So that is one of the factors for conclusions reached for the purpose of audit documentation. Audit methodology and tools used is one of the factors, that is the audit documentation for the purpose will consider the audit methodology and tools used will also be considered for the purpose of audit documentation. Thank you students for the purpose of watching the class. Please like, share and subscribe to my YouTube channel, and also download the notes from the Telegram channel, which I am going to put in the description box. So it will be more useful for you students if you watch the classes, and I am going to upload the classes on a daily basis, which will provide you a concept to clarity. Thank you students. Please watch the classes in a sequence manner. Okay students, thank you.